why fighting the Taliban became a nightmare for U.S. soldiers. For American troops sent to Afghanistan after 2001, the war was never just about firefights. It became a conflict shaped by invisibility, patience, and methods designed to wear down the mind as much as the body. The enemy rarely stood in open fields. Instead, it learned to hide, to blend in, and to turn the environment itself into a weapon. The central question is not simply how American soldiers were killed. It is how the Taliban built a system of warfare meant to exhaust, frighten, and slowly erode the sense of safety, even far from the battlefield. When U.S. forces first entered Afghanistan in late 2001, the campaign appeared fast-moving. Taliban positions collapsed quickly under airstrikes, and the advance of Afghan opposition forces, supported by small teams of American Special Operations troops. Cities fell in rapid succession. For many soldiers, it seemed like a conventional victory unfolding at high speed. But the Taliban did not disappear. They adapted. Rather than fight head-on, they withdrew into mountains, deserts, and cross-border sanctuaries. From there, they reorganized for a different kind of war, one built on ambush, concealment, and time. Their strategy was not to defeat American forces in large battles, but to make every movement uncertain and every day tense. Early signs of this shift appeared in remote eastern provinces, where patrols moved through steep valleys and narrow passes. Taliban fighters studied these routes. They learned where convoys slowed, where terrain limited visibility, and where cliffs offered high ground. Attacks came without warning, bursts of gunfire from ridgelines, rockets fired from hidden positions, then sudden silence as attackers disappeared back into the landscape. Large operations sometimes revealed how deeply prepared these defenses were. In mountain valleys where coalition forces believed they had surrounded insurgents, they instead encountered entrenched fighters using caves, bunkers, and pre-sighted firing positions. The terrain favored defenders who knew every ridge and trail. For American soldiers, altitude, weather, and distance from support added to the strain. As the war stretched into years, the Taliban increasingly relied on improvised explosive devices, or IEDs. These roadside bombs reshaped daily life for U.S. troops. Unlike a visible enemy, an IED could be anywhere, buried under a dirt road, hidden in debris, concealed in a culvert. A soldier could patrol the same route many times without incident, then encounter an explosion on a seemingly ordinary day. The psychological effect was profound. Driving down a road became an exercise in constant scanning for disturbed soil, unusual objects, wires, or subtle changes in the landscape. Soldiers describe the tension of knowing that survival could depend on noticing something as small as a patch of gravel that looked out of place. Even heavily armored vehicles could not guarantee safety against larger blasts. The Taliban understood that unpredictability was as powerful as firepower. An explosion did not just damage a vehicle, it altered how soldiers moved, how often they patrolled, and how they perceived civilians nearby. Suspicion grew because the person triggering a device might be watching from a hillside, or might be someone passing by who appeared uninvolved. Suicide bombings added another layer of uncertainty. Vehicles packed with explosives were driven toward convoys or checkpoints. Attackers on foot blended into crowds before detonating. These tactics blurred the line between battlefield and civilian space. Markets, roadsides, and gathering places became potential targets. Soldiers had to balance vigilance with restraint, knowing that a wrong decision could harm innocent people. This environment placed heavy moral pressure on troops. The Taliban sometimes operated from populated areas, using houses or village compounds as firing points. Returning fire carried the risk of civilian casualties, which insurgents could then use for propaganda. Hesitation could endanger fellow soldiers. Action could cause unintended harm. Every split-second decision carried lasting weight. Some of the most intense moments came when Taliban fighters attacked fixed positions. Small outposts in remote valleys were especially vulnerable. Surrounded by higher ground, they could be observed and targeted from multiple directions. Before dawn, attacks were common, combining machine gun fire, rockets, and mortars. Defenders often fought for hours, calling in air support while holding perimeter lines under constant pressure. These assaults were not only about capturing ground, they were meant to demonstrate that even fortified American positions were not beyond reach. The knowledge that hundreds of fighters could assemble for a coordinated attack, then disperse into the terrain afterward, reinforced the sense that control was always temporary. Beyond direct combat, trust itself became a target. As U.S. forces worked closely with Afghan security units, most partnerships were genuine. Yet, the Taliban exploited this cooperation by encouraging or coercing infiltrators. In some cases, individuals in Afghan uniforms turned their weapons on American troops during meetings or training sessions. These incidents, known as insider attacks, had an impact far beyond their numbers. After such events, daily routines changed. Soldiers kept weapons close even in supposedly secure settings. Conversations became more guarded. Training sessions required additional security measures. The bond of trust essential for partnership was strained by the knowledge that a threat might stand only a few steps away. Air operations were not immune either. Helicopters moving troops across rugged terrain faced the risk of ground fire during landing or takeoff. A single well-placed shot could bring down an aircraft carrying dozens of personnel. Losses in these incidents reverberated widely, reminding service members that even advanced technology did not eliminate vulnerability. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, the conflict had settled into a grinding rhythm. U.S. units rotated through provinces like Helmand and Kandahar, clearing areas of insurgents only to see them return after forces shifted elsewhere. Soldiers described a cycle of patrols, roadside threats, sudden firefights, and long stretches of tension punctuated by moments of violence. Reinforcements increased troop numbers during the surge years, but they also brought more contact with the enemy. Casualties rose. Many injuries were caused by blasts that left lasting physical and psychological effects. Amputations, traumatic brain injuries, and invisible wounds like post-traumatic stress became part of the war's legacy for thousands of veterans. As U.S. strategy shifted toward training Afghan forces and reducing direct combat roles, the danger did not disappear. Advisors still traveled on exposed roads, visited remote bases, and accompanied Afghan units on operations. The Taliban's tactics remained consistent. Avoid large-scale battles when possible, strike where least expected, and maintain pressure over time. For soldiers nearing the end of deployments, the knowledge that risk remained high until the final day was difficult to ignore. A tour could pass without serious incident, then change in seconds due to a hidden device or sudden attack. The randomness of violence made planning and prediction nearly impossible. In the final phase of the war, as withdrawal accelerated, U.S. forces concentrated on evacuating personnel and civilians. Even then, the threat of attack shaped every movement. Large crowds, limited space, and uncertainty created a volatile environment. The long pattern of unpredictable violence had not ended. It had simply taken a different form. Looking back, many veterans described the war not only in terms of battles, but in terms of atmosphere, the constant alertness, the weight of protective gear, the scanning of rooftops and roadsides, the effort to read faces for signs of danger. The Taliban's methods ensured that the front line was rarely clear. It could be a mountain pass, a village street, or a meeting room. What made these tactics so effective was not their sophistication, but their persistence. They relied on patience, local knowledge, and the understanding that wearing down a powerful opponent over time could be as impactful as defeating them in open combat. The goal was to make the cost of staying feel endless. For American soldiers, this meant serving in a war where the threat was often unseen, where trust was sometimes uncertain, and where the difference between routine and disaster could be a single step on the wrong patch of ground. The physical battles were intense, but the psychological strain of constant vigilance became one of the defining features of the conflict. When the mountains fall silent again and convoys stop moving, the memory of that tension remains. For those who served, the war in Afghanistan was shaped not only by enemy fire, but by the waiting, the sense that danger might be hidden in the next bend of the road or behind the next door. The Taliban's methods were designed to extend fear beyond the moment of attack. They aimed to turn uncertainty into a daily companion, to make even quiet hours feel fragile. In that way, the impact of the war did not end when a patrol returned to base. It traveled home with the soldiers, carried in memories of roads, valleys, and the constant search for threats that could not always be seen.